Parents who adopted older kids, what made you say yes? When my wife and I first walked into the group home, we had already been approved to adopt one child, ideally a toddler. We walked out 3 hours later having agreed to foster a 14-year-old boy named Isaac who hadn't spoken a single word in 4 years. The caseworker warned us before we met him. Isaac had been in 7 placements since he was 9. Every family sent him back within a few months. He wasn't violent, he wasn't destructive, he just refused to speak. Doctors called it selective mutism triggered by trauma. His file didn't say what the trauma was. Nobody knew. Isaac had never told anyone. He was sitting at a table in the common room when we met him, drawing in a spiral notebook. He didn't look up. My wife sat down across from him and slid a granola bar across the table. He glanced at it, then at her, then went back to drawing. That was our whole first meeting. In the car on the way home, my wife said, "We're taking him." I said, "He didn't even look at us." She said, "He looked at me once." That was enough. The first month was the hardest month of our marriage. Isaac moved into the spare room and closed the door. He came out for meals, ate quickly, and went back in. He was the most polite ghost you could imagine. My wife started leaving him little notes on his door. "Pancakes tomorrow if you want. New sketchbook on the kitchen counter. It's yours. Movie night at 7. No pressure." He never responded. But every morning the notes were gone, folded neatly, and left in a small stack on the kitchen table. We learned things about Isaac slowly. He was left-handed. He drew constantly, mostly buildings, always with impossible staircases. He was terrified of thunder. The first time it stormed after he moved in, we found him at 3 a.m. sitting in the hallway outside our bedroom, back against the wall, holding a flashlight. He wouldn't come in. He just sat there until morning. After that, my wife started leaving our bedroom door open a crack whenever the forecast said storms. He never came in, but he'd sit in the hallway, and that was something. 3 months in, we still hadn't heard his voice. He communicated by writing in a small notebook he carried everywhere. Short answers. Yes, no, thank you. He never asked for anything. Then one Sunday in October, everything changed. My wife's mother, Odette, came over for dinner. She's 78, from a small village in France, and she doesn't speak much English. She sat next to Isaac at the table and started telling him a story in French about her childhood, not caring that he couldn't understand. Isaac listened. He actually looked at her. When she finished, she reached over, patted his hand, and said the only English she knew well. "Good boy, sweet boy." Isaac's eyes filled up. That night, when I was locking up the house, I heard something from his room. I stopped and listened. He was humming, just barely, a tune I didn't recognize. I didn't tell my wife until the next morning. She cried. 4 days later, Isaac left a note on our bedroom door. It said, "Can Odette come again?" It was the first full sentence we'd ever seen him write. Odette started coming over every Sunday. She'd cook. She'd tell Isaac stories he couldn't understand. She'd pat his hand and call him sweet boy. Slowly, over weeks, Isaac started writing longer notes. Then, one Tuesday morning at breakfast, he pointed at the orange juice and whispered one word. "Please." My wife dropped her coffee mug. It shattered on the floor. Isaac froze, terrified. But my wife just laughed and said, "That's the best sound I've ever heard in my life." Isaac stared at her for a long moment. Then, for the first time since we'd met him, he smiled. The adoption was finalized 14 months later. Isaac was 15 by then. He still didn't speak much, but he spoke. He called us by our first names for the first 6 months. And one night, he was helping me carry groceries in from the car, and he said, "Thanks, Dad." I stood in the driveway for a full minute after he went inside, just holding a bag of apples, trying to breathe. Last spring, Isaac graduated high school. He gave a speech in front of 400 people. He talked about being the boy who didn't speak. He talked about 7 placements. He talked about the notes on the door and the flashlight in the hallway. Then he talked about Odette, who was sitting in the front row in her best dress. He said, "She told me stories in a language I didn't understand, but I understood her. She was the first person who didn't need me to say anything to know I was there." At the end of the speech, he looked at my wife and me and said, "And to the 2 people who left the door open a crack every time it stormed, I saw you. I always saw you. Thank you for waiting."